Hello and welcome to the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins Podcast. I am your host, Matt Infante, joined as always by Adam H. Beasley, who may just be the team's newest linebacker at this rate, perhaps. Adam, how are you?
For those of you listening and not watching, I decided to think warm for this week's podcast. I am wearing one of my favorite golf shirts. It's got nothing but flamingos on it, bright blue. Couldn't be more Florida than this. Because in just 4 days' time, I am going to die. Well, probably not die, but I might lose an appendage or two. Going to Kansas City.
Aren't you from Pennsylvania?
Oh, come now. Like Pennsylvania, chilly. Midwest, and where I went to Syracuse, god-awful cold, okay? Like I think it snows like twice a year in PA, and it's maybe like 3-4 inches. Like they don't have significant winters. The forecast, which I just wrote about on ProFootballNetwork.com, is horrendous. It is so scary, man. It's a high of 10 on Saturday. Kickoff at 8:20, is it? 8:20, 8:15, something like that?
I believe, yeah.
5 degrees, wind chill of negative 10, which makes it, or will make it, the coldest game in the Miami Dolphins' 58-year history. And I am not looking forward to it. And the only reason, well, there's multiple reasons, but the most recent reason is because they couldn't hold on to a fourth quarter lead against their biggest rival.
Okay. Well, before we get to what we witnessed painfully on Sunday, you talk about the coldest, this will be the coldest game. The previous coldest game, there's some symmetry there. It was in Arrowhead against the Chiefs, and the Dolphins won with, I believe, Chad Pennington beating Tyler Thigpen. Is that, I believe it was 2008, so it was definitely Pennington. I think it was Tyler Thigpen who was the quarterback of the Chiefs, and that was a game that they were actually trailing and had to come back to get them in position to win the division against the Jets a couple weeks later. So, symmetry, Arrowhead, cold weather. Tyler Thigpen is a little different than Patrick Mahomes.
And also Joey Porter ain't walking through that door, okay?
If he did, he might be one of their best options. Okay, so Adam, let's talk about what we saw. And what we did see was the Dolphins get a 14-7 lead. And they got there in a very interesting way, right? They turned over Josh Allen because that's what Josh Allen does, where he makes some amazing plays and he also gives the ball back a lot. And then the second half happened. And I don't really know what to say. There's a lot to kind of talk about here. I think my starting point for this discussion with you would be how the Dolphins got the ball back with a 14-7 lead 2 different times in the second half and could not even make it a 2-score game. But we're not talking about, some people say they could have iced the game. No, one of those was mid-third quarter they got the ball. But boy, making it a 2-score game is a different feel than giving the Bills the ball back at 14-7 twice, because you're just asking for it at that point.
I would have settled for a first down, man. I mean, that's the thing, is that they had 14 plays in the second half. 14 plays. That's a drive, right? That's what they had in the totality of the second half. They had 57 yards. You and I were talking about this on Slack last night. The idea that Mike McDaniel, offensive guru, I watched the national championship game last night. Washington runs the McDaniel playbook. Like so many of their concepts we saw last night. And those were new concepts to 2023 from Mike McDaniel. He is a revolutionary, cutting-edge offensive mind. Of course, no one has all the answers. Some people have bad games, but the idea that an offense led by Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead, and Devon Achane, who might be the best running back on their roster, had 57 yards in the second half and 14 plays. I think 3 first downs, 2 of which came on that final drive. It doesn't compute. Like it doesn't. It is an historically embarrassing performance in the biggest game of all of those people's lives. Maybe not Tyreek. He played in the Super Bowl, obviously. It's not the biggest game of his life to date, but certainly the biggest game that he's had as a Miami Dolphin, right? and what you pay him $30 million a year to show up for. I'm almost at a loss for words, and that's saying something, Infante.
Yeah. So it's a lot to unpack here. Penalties, drop passes, misfires by the quarterback in the second half. It's just in the first half when you're averaging 7 yards a play, gained 218 yards, running the ball at will. Right, HN and Wilson combined for a little over 90 yards in the first half, almost 6 yards a carry. They abandoned the run in the second half. And you can talk a little bit about game script and all, but their first possession was 3 passes in the second half, right? 3 passes, 3 and out, all completed, by the way. 3 for 3 for about 8 yards, I believe it was, or 9 yards, and they end up
9. It was 4th and 1. They went I think it was 6 yards, 2 yards, 1 yards for those 3.
Right, that was the Braxton Berrios play that he ran the route short of the sticks and
right
was kept short. Okay, so refusal to run the ball there. Then when they got the ball back again, they didn't run the ball. So the play calling, I have a lot of questions about.
Okay,
and
real
the
quick.
Other part,
go back and look at those situations, and I'm not making excuses for not running the ball at all. There were plays to be made. Okay,
right?
There were plays that were there, and we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or whatever it is getting into a lot of these thorny issues, but Sunday was the first time in 2 years that McDaniel even hinted at real criticism of Tua Tagovailoa. And he did it obviously in his upbeat, he's not a flamethrower by any stretch of the imagination. But he said 2 things. 1, we cannot throw those interceptions. Can't do it. And 2, he said, well, we didn't run the ball in the second half because it was nothing but single high looks. I'm sorry, if you want to be a $50 million a year quarterback, if you want to lead your team to the Super Bowl, you have Tyreek Hill. I know Jalen Waddle isn't out there. Okay, fine. Braxton Berrios is still a serviceable player at the very least. Cedric Wilson's made a lot of big plays for this team this year. Single high looks against this offense in this scheme should be green light throw every single down. It should, and it should be chunk play after chunk play after chunk play.
No, right, and a couple of the passes that Tua did make were dropped, right? And the other criticism I would make of Tyreek Hill, and I think you wrote something about Tyreek Hill and drops, and is it a cause for concern, was the offense in general after that overturned play. It should have never even got to that point. The offense did not hurry up to the line when Tyreek dropped that 1st and 15 pass that went for about 14 yards, right? And then they ended up reviewing it. They couldn't have taken their time anymore if they wanted to. And that's either on the quarterback or on the coach or both. But that was a big game-changing moment because they did not recover from that. On that.
Yeah, no, 100%. We didn't get into that nitty-gritty simply because there were so many other failures on Sunday night. But my guess, just watching it in real time, and I had the same exact thought you did in real time, my guess is that they were confident they had the catch. That's the thing, is that Tyreek thought he caught the ball. And so it was why should we hurry up? They're not going to challenge us. I caught the ball. Obviously, it was wrong. Although you go back and look at that, you could make a case that it was pinned between his forearms. When he was on the ground, he certainly didn't have it in his hands. But if you pin it between your forearms, that's still a catch. I was a bit surprised that they thought that was enough conclusive evidence to overturn. Certainly, I could absolutely see it as a drop for sure. But that's not the standard. The standard is, do we have conclusive proof? Yes, the ball hits the ground. The ball's allowed to hit the ground if it doesn't move. So my guess is, getting back to your point, they thought they had the catch. And, okay, if you want to give us a free timeout to get our minds straight, fine. We're 2nd and 1. Obviously, they were wrong. Wasn't that the drive that ended up at 2nd and 30?
Yes, that is. So at the drive, it started out penalties, right? You had Armstead go false start. Then you had that overturned reception. Then you had the Alec Ingold block in the back, or whatever that was.
What was that? I mean, how was that a block in the back?
That was, yeah.
Or blindside,
I was confused by
crackback
that.
block is what they call it.
It was a
Basically.
crack, yes, but I don't know. I've seen that a lot watching Red Zone on Sundays. Every day this year, you see those kinds of plays, and it's not called.
You know what the difference between this offense and earlier in the year was? They could overcome that stuff. Like 2nd and 15 wasn't a death sentence for this offense beginning of the season. 3rd and 11, we got this. We're fine. A couple of things are different, obviously. You don't have Tyreek Hill at full strength and didn't have Jalen Waddle or Raheem Mostert at all in that game. So, the injuries that Dolphins have are – they're going into the – the advanced statisticians will give you grief because the Browns are on their 4th string quarterback, so they're way more injured than the Dolphins are. The Dolphins at least have their quarterback. But from a functional standpoint, Joe Flacco is more effective than Deshaun Watson was right now. So from an effective standpoint, no team has lost more throughout the course of the season than the Dolphins. And quite frankly, I'm surprised they're not more than 3.5-point road dogs.
Yeah, even in that game, though, to your point, they converted a 3rd and 14 in the first half on their first scoring drive. So it was just the way everything was going in that first half. They were moving the ball. Well, I was concerned about the defense because outside of a couple, Josh Allen boneheaded decisions, and it's not just the interceptions, it's throwing that pass short of the end zone right before the half that saved the Dolphins as well. I was not concerned about the offense. Heading into the half, I was like, okay, we'll score 2 more touchdowns probably at least. Can the defense hold them? It was just stunning to see the failure. And even the things that were working in the first half just stopped working. And very little, kind of adjustments. And frankly, they went away. So things were, that were working in the first half, not working in the second half. Well, they didn't even try any of those misdirection pitches. I don't believe at all in the second half when those were picking up, chunks at a time for Achane and for Wilson. They stopped that. The passing game just seemed to just forget how to execute, and then some bad penalties, and it all kind of mixed together into a second half disaster for the offense, where the defense actually can, surprisingly played well, held it together. This was not on the defense, even though they were undermanned.
Yeah, no. To me, I don't remember them possessing the ball in the second half except for that last possession. Like, seriously, I don't have strong memories. I have to go back and watch the game again. I don't have strong memories of them having the ball because it was you blink your eyes and it's gone. Like, what was their time possession in the second half? It was like 6-7 minutes, something like that. That's bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think on any one of those drives, honestly, if they had a first down, like 1st and 10 on one of those drives, and they had a chunk play for 12, 15 yards, it would have been a completely different dynamic. It would have. They just could never get started. And the penalties killed them, of course. The drops killed them. It's funny, McDaniel got a little salty yesterday when one of my colleagues asked him about Tyreek's drops. But it's not a media creation. It's a real thing. Two things can be absolutely true. That Tyreek Hill has had the best receiving season in Dolphins history, one of the 10 best receiving seasons of any player in NFL history. That can be true, and also, man, he's kind of disappeared in biggest games. Like, he's kind of like, I remember vividly, Philadelphia game, drop touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore, an egregious drop touchdown. Mm-hmm. Sunday, I don't know if he was credited with the drop officially, but he had 3 or 4 more plays where he should have made the catch. That $30 million receivers need to make those catches, including on the last drive when Dane Jackson probably saved a touchdown by interfering with him.
He still should have caught that.
Should have caught that pass and had his steam, going downfield. So, if you. I said it about last week. It's doubly true this week. What's Tyreek's legacy as a Miami Dolphin going to be if the games that you pay him to dominate in, he can't make the basic catches?
Yeah, and he will have his opportunity to redeem himself here, and in kind of a stage where the NFL script writers. Could they have gotten it any more right? You have Tyreek going back to Kansas City in the first round of the playoffs. So he'll have an opportunity, right? So he can right those wrongs and have a big
Oh,
game.
there's a bunch of those storylines. Cowboys, Packers. I mean, can the Cowboys finally beat Green Bay? Deshaun Watson, or the ghost of
Cleveland,
Deshaun
Houston.
Watson, going to Houston. Obviously, he's not playing because he's hurt. And Stafford going back to Detroit. Like, there's some fun storylines this weekend. I think for as mediocre as most of the regular season was, it's going to be a really fun playoffs. It really could. I think the NFL, I would have preferred to have seen Jacksonville than Pittsburgh in the playoff field because I think Jacksonville's a better team, but maybe not after the egg they laid down the stretch. They're the more talented team, particularly on offense for sure. They're the more interesting team to watch. But beyond that, I don't think the NFL could have asked for anything better with the 14 teams that are in. The NFC, they also have a bunch of mediocrity after the top, but you get brands like Baker Mayfield, the Bucks, the Green Bay Packers. Like, those aren't good teams, but they're interesting teams. I think the NFL got really lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, as a Dolphin fan, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about what might have been, right? Because they shouldn't, and you wrote this, the Dolphins should not have even been in a situation where they had to play their starters on Sunday. And it all comes back to that Titans game. And at the time watching it, it felt like a bad loss. But still, you had all December in front of you. You can overcome it, and never foresaw the collapse that we saw here where they end up, not winning the division. But even if everything plays out the way it did, and the Titans and the Dolphins just find a way to hold on in that Titans game, Dolphins are the 2 seed, and their path to an AFC title game is home against Pittsburgh, and then either home against the Chiefs, the Texans, or the Browns. Now it's in Kansas City, in Baltimore. Like that is an amazing change, of events there. The butterfly effect, some might say, all based on blowing a game that they had no right losing.
Can we be honest for a second, though? Are the Dolphins any better than the 6th best team in the AFC at this point?
No, they are. Assuming you get Waddle back.
Okay, you might be better. You might be the 5th best team. You might be better than the Texans. You're not better than the Ravens. You're not better than the Bills. We just saw that play out. We'll see on Saturday if they're in the same neighborhood as the Chiefs. I would say at this point, no. Not better than the Browns at this point. So
it's close.
At best, you're the 5th best team in the AFC. So
yeah, because they have an insane amount of talent on IR, and that won't be on the field. If they were full strength, and you can say that about every team, but if they were full strength, it's a different conversation.
I will say this, Matt. They did lose to Buffalo by 28 points at full strength. I mean, it's not like this team was just smoking everybody when they were at full strength.
No, I know. Listen, they should be criticized for everything that Dolphin fans like myself, although I tried to stay out of it, would defend them for. When everyone's talking about they can't beat good teams and they're frauds, I have no comeback. Yeah. You know what? You're probably right. You're probably right. And they'll have a chance to prove, to prove themselves here in Kansas City. But I think it was The Ringer had a great stat. They were 1-5 against playoff teams, a minus 91 point differential against playoff teams, which is the 3rd worst in the NFL. The only teams better were the Giants and worse were the Giants and Commanders. Had a worse point differential against playoff teams.
And what's wild is you go and look at their stats. Tua and Tyreek in those games against playoffs.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I have it for you.
Go for it.
I'm glad you mentioned it. So Tua, his splits against the Eagles, Chiefs, Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills twice. So the playoff teams. A rating of 110 versus the other teams, rating of 84 against those playoff teams. But I don't want, not just rating, look at completion percentage, goes from 71% to 65. Passing yards per game goes from 293 to 232. Yards per attempt is over 9 against those other teams, and it's 6.87 against those playoff teams. And the touchdown interception ratio, 22 to 8 versus 7 to 6. So now I wanted to ask you this, but I guess we're here, so we might as well ask. What do you do this offseason? Let's say Sunday goes as we expect. The Dolphins lose. I don't care how they lose, by a lot, by little. They lose. Season's over. Dolphins have an interesting situation because they have their quarterback playing on the fifth-year option at just over $23 million. They need that cap space, though. Everyone assumed that Tua would play well. You would extend them, lower the cap number in 2024, and move on. Can you do that at this point?
Well, let's get a couple of caveats. You say they lose. Do they lose 45-41 and they lose on a Mahomes drive length of the field with 2 minutes left in the game?
No.
Or do they don't lose that way? So they lose.
No, if they lose that way, the conversation is much different. They lose, and in a similar fashion, they lost to Buffalo. The defense does enough, especially undermanned, and the offense just can't get it done. Scores 10 to 17 points.
Well, you definitely don't make him the highest paid player in National Football League history.
Right.
Okay, that's step one. Because that was on the table a month ago.
Oh, absolutely. Before that Titans game, I think everyone was expecting it. You're going to extend him. He's going to be the highest paid player until the next one overpasses him, and that's where he slotted in.
Yeah, so he would have gotten between $50 and $55 million a year, somewhere in that range, maybe 150, 180 guaranteed. And he would have been the bedrock of your franchise for at least the next 3 or 4 years, at least. Can't do that now. You do that now, and you're making the same mistake that Adam Gase made, that Mike Tannenbaum made, where you see enough, you have a good sense that, hey, we got a quarterback. We may not have the best quarterback, but we got a quarterback. Let's give him, a market contract. And in fact, the Tannehill contract wasn't even record-breaking. It was good, but it wasn't what we're talking about what Tua would have been. So let's give him a solid B plus contract for a quarterback and roll with him. Well, when you roll with someone who has proven that he has a hard ceiling, don't be surprised when the team has a hard ceiling. Don't be surprised that if you're Adam Gase and you're pulling your hair out in year 2 and year 3. Well, year 2 because he can't stay healthy, and year 3 because of performance. Don't be surprised if you're looking for another job. And I think that's really, and we're going to talk about McDaniel at length, I believe, but that's really what the question needs to be. I'm not going to talk about Chris Greer because that guy's invincible. Like, he's bulletproof. But McDaniel, does he want to tie his career to a quarterback when the lights came on, had bad game in Baltimore? Good first half, but bad second half against Buffalo. Yeah. And then we go to Kansas City and see what happens there. Can you say, okay, we're winning a Super Bowl with this dude and let's go? And not only, by the way, Infante, I want to let you speak because I'm a blowhard here, a blowhole too, but
that name got shot down.
It did. But not only, we're going to commit to you. We're going to expect a different result from the same thing we've seen from the 4 years prior going forward, but we're going to do it in a way that it is going to consume a fifth of our salary cap, maybe even more. How do you justify that?
Right. So then what do you do? Because he can't play on 50-year option because they have, if they do that, they're not bringing back a fraction of the guys that they probably should or need to.
The fifth-year option is only like $21 million.
23.
Okay, so what are you going to lower the cap number to 10, to 5 to 10, something like that?
Well, all along that was the idea, right? And I suppose you can do it creatively with void years and things like that.
No, I think the short-term relief that you would get from a Tua contract extension would be far outweighed by the long-term pain if you're not sold in the guy. Like, you got to think beyond 2024 at that point. And here's the thing: is that if you don't think Tua can win you a Super Bowl, and if they walk away from this experiment this year thinking we're with Tua anywhere between 9 and 11 wins. If the division breaks our way, we'll host a playoff game. If not, we're going on the road. right? That would be what you would say going forward with Tua. We need to win a Super Bowl. You need an incredible running game. You need an incredibly disciplined team from penalty standpoint and turnover standpoint, and you need your defense to stay healthy and play great. That's asking a lot, and that's why these teams pay these quarterbacks $50 to $55 million a year, because they paper over a lot of that. Josh Allen papers over a lot of deficiencies on the Bills. I don't still think you should count out the Chiefs going back to the Super Bowl this year. I know they're a lesser team. They got Patrick Mahomes, okay, and they got Chris Jones, and they got a really good defense, and there's no reason to doubt Patrick Mahomes being able to elevate that team. There's 4 years of evidence to doubt Tua Tagovailoa being able to do that. So that's the thing is that no. So you're asking me what I would do. At the very least, I would say no to that contract. No to, what we just discussed. That's step one. Then you go to Tua and say, hey, do you want to be here? Like, is Mike McDaniel, what he's done to your career, do you think you can replicate this somewhere else? Right? And if he comes to the realization, this is as good as it gets here, maybe you think about maybe like a Daniel Jones type contract. Something that a year or two, and then if 2024 is a repeat of 2023, you draft one. Like that to me is the ideal plan. I don't think, some people are like, oh, we can move on this year. It's really hard because they're going to end up with at the best, the 19th pick in the draft, like at best. So probably something like 21, 22 is going to be, even if they lose this weekend, where they're going to end up. So would you then see if you can convince a top 10 team to take Tua and that pick to let you move up to 8 or 9 to get the fourth best quarterback off the board? Like, is that your plan? No. I think what they should do, and this is what I'm going to write on Sunday if they lose, is one way or the other, think about the future in 2025 and do whatever you can to get your quarterback situation to a place where you want it to be in 2025 if you're convinced that Tua is not the guy. If that means giving him a 1-year extension, 2-year extension, if he's willing to sign it, fine. Yeah, it's fine. Because even still, you bring a guy in, you have a veteran quarterback who he can learn under. Tua is not a guy to make waves. He's not going to be one of those, it's not my job to mentor. He's the consummate teammate. He's not that at all. But if he balks at that contract, year to year, buddy. And if I can find a way to move on this year and get someone better, I do it. But the odds are stacked against him because of just all the things we just talked about.
It's amazing. I'm shaking my head. Every January, it's the same thing for this franchise. This is what we're talking about. Every January, it never changes. It's incredibly frustrating.
Do you think anything I just said was wrong? Do you think anything I said was off base?
No, it's just 2 months ago we were talking about this year and next year are the window for them. Load up. This is the window. And now we're talking about 2025. How do we get a new quarterback? And 2 months ago you would have been crazy for saying that, and now it's certainly in play. Let's see how Sunday goes or Saturday night goes, but certainly in play. It's incredible that we're here after where we were entering December, right? But for Dolphin fans, it's the same thing. It's the same thing seemingly every year. And now I have to raise the next question to you, because every year we have to ask this question, it seems like. And what happens with Mike McDaniel if this, I don't want to call it historic collapse. This is a pretty epic collapse, even by Dolphin standards, from where they were 3 games up in the division with 5 to go to a first round exit potentially. Let's say they lose. You're not getting rid of McDaniel now, but is next year a hot seat year for Mike McDaniel?
I think and I know it's been written elsewhere, and has had enormous blowback on social media that they lose, they're on the hot seat, and I'll get your thoughts on it in a second. I'm going to say this. If you're the owner of a franchise that fires one head coach after digging through the pile of bleep sewage that 2019 was, to get them to back-to-back winning seasons in 2020, 2021, And in that span, have a 10-win season. You're the only 10-win team in 10 years or whatever not to make the playoffs. And the next year come back from what was a 6 or 7-game losing streak, to be one result away from making the playoffs down the stretch. And then you turn around and you fire him and you fire the next guy who rehabbed Tua Tagovailoa, who the league thought couldn't play, and got you to back-to-back playoffs. McDaniel's not the one who's going to go in that situation. It's Tua, right? Tua is the one that will be the one who's the fall guy. And I think McDaniel is smart enough not to tie himself indefinitely to any one player. He was wise to bear hug Tua because that was the organizational decision that we can rehab this guy. And they were right. This team it's been the best 2-year stretch they've had since the early 2000s. Right? They made the right gamble. The question they're going to have to ask is there another level we can get to with him? And if not, do we need to move on? And it would be stunning to me, considering what is there? 40% of their salary cap is going to be on the injured list this week between IR and inactives. I mean, assuming Xavier doesn't play, you got to have some realism. But, Infante, what I will say is this. How McDaniel handles this offseason will be incredibly instructive to see how things go forward from here. Adam Gase didn't lose his job. The number one reason that Adam Gase lost his job wasn't because they had a bad 2000 and whatever that was, 18, that was his last year.
Yep.
It was because he and Stephen Ross were like this. Okay? And the number one reason Brian Flores lost his job wasn't because they went 9-8 in 2018. It's because he and Chris Greer were like this. Okay? McDaniel's a smart guy. He is going to go the opposite direction of that. He is going to include Stephen Ross as much as he can in the planning. He is going to communicate with Chris Greer, which he already does at a very high level. So I don't think that's the reason if he's gone, he's gone. I do think, however, he needs to be open to some significant adjustments. I don't know if anyone, and we can ask him tomorrow, anyone will defend Danny Crossman at this point. All right, they were last in kickoff returns going into this past week, and then they gave up a punt return for a touchdown. Okay, they've had no explosive plays in the return game. The only thing really that's gone well, Bailey's been okay, hasn't been great. He's been okay, and Jason Sanders has had a renaissance season. Beyond that, no rationale to keep Danny Crossman. Sorry, there just isn't. Is he going to be like, boom, we're going to fix special teams? Is he going to look at the insanely long list of injuries that have been not just this year, but the last couple of years for this team, and ask the right tough questions to the people responsible for keeping them healthy and strong? And if he doesn't get the answers he needs, is he willing to move people from their positions who have been in those positions for some time? Is he willing to do that? Is he willing to maybe figure out that it's really hard to both call plays and operate the game at the same time? Like, does he relinquish play calling responsibility, or does he turn over some of the in-game stuff discreetly to someone else? Like, these are all issues that they're no secret. Like, these are concerns the Dolphins have had pretty openly for some time. Is he going to make those tough decisions? If the defense gets housed by the Chiefs and, for the fourth time this year, give up a ton of points, to have a tough conversation with Vic Fangio? Is he capable of having that conversation with Vic Fangio? Because you talk about there's a big gap in experience, and I know McDaniel is certainly respected around the league, but he's not Vic Fangio. Is he able to handle that dynamic? So you're going to have to see personal growth, and that's the thing is we here in sports take land love one extreme or the other. Dolphins, it's going to be in the middle. And the middle is where they're going to decide whether or not Mike McDaniel is a great coach or just another pretty good coach that couldn't get it done here.
Yeah. The middle is where the Dolphins have lived for the better part of 2 decades. And that's what's so frustrating about it. So it's not easy. It's easier to go from being a bad team to a good team than good team to a great team, right? That's the step that trips up so many. It's easy to get that turnaround. It's hard to become a championship caliber team from being a good team, and that's what we're going to see. The Dolphins are kind of in now. They're a good team. How do they take the next step? As far as McDaniel's future, and I said this to you before, if they lose to the Chiefs, I mean, it's. I just turned 40 on Sunday night watching that disaster against the Bills. I was 16 years old the last time they won a playoff game. Okay. If they don't win one this year, they don't win one next year, unless there's some kind of obvious reason or some catastrophic injury to the quarterback, things like that. I think I'm fine moving on.
Okay. Well, real quick, you're going to hold his feet to the fire if dudes who just came off the street can't get pressure on Patrick Mahomes on Sunday or Saturday.
No. All I'm saying is, if they lose this game, well, they shouldn't have been in this position. They should have a home game, so that's on him. That Titans game, like that, they shouldn't be having to go to Kansas City. So they're already in a spot they shouldn't be. But, I'm not saying I'm making changes after this week. What I'm saying is next year, then, if they don't win a playoff game, like, I'm not asking for a lot. Literally, once the Lions beat the Rams, and I think they will, the Dolphins will have the longest playoff drought. Right now, the Lions have the longest playoff win drought. It was like 93 or something, 92, somewhere in there. Then it's the Dolphins in 2000. That's it. So once the Lions win theirs,
yeah, but what? Okay, all right.
No, but just how long do I have to wait, Adam?
I understand your point, but why does Mike McDaniel have to answer for the likes of Cam Cameron and Joe Philbin and all those just jokes they had?
It's just the mediocrity. The discussion we had for about 20 minutes just before was about Tua's future and all these things that we have every January about the current quarterback's name, basically. And it's just, if McDaniel is not going to solve this issue, right, and bring wins, and a lot of what we saw in the second half, I mean, everyone wants to blame the play caller, and a lot of times it's not fair, but there were certain things that they went away from that were working in the first half, and you just have to wonder why, right? Why was he outthinking himself again? And he's done that sometimes this year, where the play calling gets a little sideways because he's probably overthinking things in the moment. And you have questions about game management. This year it's great. We haven't seen the delay of games, right? We saw last year and all these procedural type things that we saw last year that we were criticizing him about. But I feel like it's something new every year that kind of pops up. And yeah, he's a first-year head coach, so I get it. But at some point, someone's got to take the fall. You said it might be the quarterback. Maybe it's both. If things don't change next year, because you need to advance in the playoffs.
Who are you going to bring in? Who are you going to bring in that's better?
I know that.
That's the thing. The firing is the easy part, Infante.
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
It feels great to say, get out of here. You're bum.
That's what I say about the quarterback too all the time. And that's why it's so hard, right? Even when we had Tannehill here, it was, well, how are you getting better? Because he's good enough. It's not easy to find a top 10 quarterback. You have someone that's between 10 and 15, which is where Tannehill may have been at his peak. How do you replace that? Not easy. And Tua, I think, is better than that. So I don't know how you improve upon that immediately.
The difference is that if you keep McDaniel, it doesn't hamstring the rest of your entire roster. It's not like, okay, Tua is still on his rookie deal. If he's costing him $5 million against the cap next year, we're not even having this conversation. He has fantastic value. They'll figure it out when they figure it out. Give him another year. No, I mean, at the very least, to your point, he's going to cost them $23 million against the cap next year. Unless they give him an extension, and to do that, then you're stuck with him for 4 or 5 years after that. I mean, there are shades of gray. And I will also say this. If you cut Tua Tagovailoa today, there would be teams that are interested. There wouldn't be teams pounding down the door for him. Okay, that would be moving heaven and earth to get him. If you fired Mike McDaniel today, there would be a line out the door looking to hire that guy. He would have an interview with every single opening that there is this year in the National Football League. He'd be
firing today. But what happens if next year they're 9-3, end up 10-7 or 11-6 because of another late season collapse, stumble into the playoffs, first round exit? I mean, there's a lot of variable. There's a lot of nuance to how that unfolds next year. All I'm saying is it's certainly in the realm of possibility. Because I selfishly want a playoff win. I want one, Adam.
We should probably start thinking about wrapping this up because news alert, NFL Network. You see this, Infante?
I have not.
The Dolphins are signing veteran outside linebacker Justin Houston following all their recent injuries. Report from Mike Garafolo.
Former Chief Justin Houston.
Former Chief, revenge game.
Yeah.
So we should probably wrap soon because I need to go write that story.
Okay. Well, so I'm done with my venting. I want one playoff win. I was 16 years old the last time they won. Okay.
That's fine. I want to win Powerball. Okay. Seriously. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen this year. It's not.
Okay. So let's talk about it. So the Chiefs, are you more concerned about stopping them or moving the ball on them? Or just the weather in general, frankly?
I mean, all of the above. Yeah, there's not a single matchup I like at this point. I mean, where can you point to at this point and say, all right, the one place I can point to, Chiefs receivers versus Dolphins secondary, assuming Javon Holland plays, which is still not exactly a slam dunk. But yeah, no, it's. If the Dolphins didn't get Jalen Phillips hurt, didn't get Bradley Chubb hurt, didn't get Andrew Van Ginkel hurt, didn't get Xavier Howard hurt, I'd really like their chances. But Mahomes is 9-2 at home in the playoffs. It's the coldest game ever in Dolphins history. I just don't see it, man. I think it's more likely to be 35-13 than it is to be a Dolphins win.
All right. I think we're both expecting the Chiefs to win. I think it'll be somewhat competitive. I don't think it'll be 35-13. But okay, are we in agreement there? Both think the Chiefs end up winning this game.
Yes.
So let me ask you one final question. What's the path? If the Dolphins win and we're here next week, what happened?
Tua went bonkers.
Is that so? It's an offense. It's not a 13-10 game. It's a 30-27 game. Is that? It would be the offense, in your view, that has to get it done?
100%. And you should, because that's where your money is. At least.
And you're going to have Waddle back and Mostert back. You're going to have 3 functional running backs, an offensive line that is good enough. Yeah. And maybe Tyreek will go make a play against his old team that doesn't involve him dropping a pass that probably shouldn't have been a fumble, but called a fumble that's returned for a touchdown that, changes the entire game like last
time. And then if Tua has that in him, and then he goes to Baltimore and does it again, give him every penny you got. I mean, seriously. Then he's
one step at a time.
What's that?
Okay, let's say he does it against Kansas City and then Baltimore. You know what? Let's table that. Well, we will talk about that next week if the unthinkable, the unimaginable actually happens, and the Dolphins pull this off. So prediction, real quick, score. Give me a score.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be in the range of like 27-10, 2-3 score Chiefs victory, and I think it's going to be one of those deals where they give you hope in the first half, and then it just gets away from them in the second half again.
Yeah, no, I see that. I think the Dolphins will not get that elusive playoff win. I think it stays competitive till a fourth quarter pull away. Yeah, something like you said, 24-13. Something along those lines probably feels right. And we'll see. Hopefully we're both wrong. Adam, you'll be there. Make sure you pack your long johns and whatever you need to stay, well in 0-degree weather. Make sure you have it. And hopefully we'll see you back here next week.
Just remember, I will not be wearing this on Saturday.
You totally should walk in with that. On top of all your sweatshirts and jackets and everything, have the flamingos out for everyone in the press box to see.
That's not a bad idea.
All right. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like it. Leave a comment as well if you'd like, maybe about Adam's shirt. And we will see you back here next week on the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins Podcast.